The man had no children, so he had a carpenter dig up a piece of wood and carved it to look like a boy and took it back to be their child. The wife looked at the little wooden figure and happily accepted her husband's kindness. At night, the wooden man suddenly came to life. She screamed for her mother. The woman woke up from her dream. She and her husband watched in wonder all night. They finally had a baby. Then the priest named the baby Wooden Peter, and before you knew it, he had grown into a big boy. Peter asked his father for $8. The father opened a treasure chest. He let him take whatever he wanted, but he only took $8. He took the money and ran to the blacksmith's store. The master looked at the boy who was like the sun. He felt that the boy was something else. Peter told the master he wanted to buy the sword he'd first made. The master found the rusty sword in the scrap metal. Peter put the sword on his body. It was as if it had been made for him. It fit him perfectly. Then he put down his coin and ran happily home. The next day, Peter dragged his father to the market. He pushed his way into the crowd. He saw two cows tied together with a gold chain. The owner of the oxen promised whoever could cut the chains would own the cows. Peter ran and swung his sword, and in an instant it was cut. The sound of the golden chain was heard in 12 countries. Then the two cows ran into the barn with their tails wagging. The owner of the cows went up to Peter and told him, his cows are just coals of fire. Peter took this to heart. He went back to the barn and burned 12 pieces of wood. When the charcoal burned, he poured it into a barrel. Two oxen quickly ate up the coals. One cow headed towards sunset. The other cow went towards the sunrise. Then Peter called his father. He tapped his finger on the left corner of the door. Suddenly red wine came out of the flower pot on the wall, and brandy came out of the corner on the right, and the table was set. He told his father, whenever anyone passes by the house again, they could come and drink the wine here. Then Peter said, if one day my father sees the plow truck stop, the stone mill jumped onto the cart by itself, and the red wine would turn to water, and the brandy would turn to red blood, that would mean he was dead. If father wants to find him, he'll get on the plow truck. Only he knows where Peter is. 12 days later, Peter said he was going to travel to other countries, so Wooden Peter set off. He traveled through 11 countries. He arrived at the castle of the 12th king. Peter wanted the king to let him work here as a carpenter, as long as he could provide food. The old king agreed, and he was very pleased with his work. In the meantime, the king's daughter fell in love with Peter. She wanted her father's permission to marry her, and the king thought Peter was a fine young man, so he agreed. But it wasn't long before the king received a letter. He cried so hard he couldn't stop crying, because the writer told him to gather an army and fight. When Peter found out, he told his majesty not to be sad. He will repel the enemy like this shred of paper, and so Peter was alone. He stabbed the soldiers to the ground with his sword, but at the end, he fell. They killed him and buried him in the ground. The next morning at dawn, a plow came to Peter's door. The stone mill jumped on it of its own accord. The red wine turned to water. Brandy turned to blood. The father was surprised that this day had come. He immediately got in the car and searched for his son. Just then two beasts came down from the sky. The sky fell and the earth split apart. The two bulls started digging and digging, and finally they found Peter. By now, his head was separated from his body. There was no sign of life. Two cows put his body back together with their horns and blew in his soul. Wooden Peter woke up from his sleep and returned to the castle. Finally, the king gathered his court and gave the throne to the brave Peter.